Let me make sorry folks, in the LinkedIn YouTube realm, things were muted on my end. Let me just make sure that everything is good here. Boop. All right. Okay. So it's okay. We didn't miss anything. I was just about to introduce myself anyway. So thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the Programmatically Correct live series, Demystifying Programmatic Media or the Programmatic Industry, latest trends or headlines for digital marketers. My name is Ellen Parker. I am your host. I am also the Chief Programmatic Sensei of Ellen Parker Consulting, and we offer customizable training for individuals and teams, digital marketing teams that are looking to offer programmatic media as a service, or they're just trying to refine their skill set when it comes to paid media, including programmatic media. So we work with some teams that are interested into developing their skill set, whether you're on a traditional media side, whether you're a digital marketer, you're offering PPC services, SEM, paid social, SEO, even some PR agencies that I've worked with, and you're considering just giving the full spectrum, paid media spectrum to your clients, and programmatic media is something that you are still learning to. So you work with me, we customize the training between 4 to 6 months. We meet either weekly or bi-weekly, depending on your client's needs, depending on your team's needs, because that's really important. And then we go from there. I provide anywhere from the fundamentals to how to sell programmatic, to how the best practices in terms of how to plan or strategize, including programmatic services, how to work with programmatic media vendors, partners, how to decipher everything that's going on and still make sure that you're still offering the best of the best. So it's a pretty cool training. I'm not going to lie. We not only identify fundamentals, but we also work at the team levels, and we help implement we really help implement what is the word? Internal operational workflow to help your team thrive, because a happy team is a productive team, and productive team brings results. So with that being said, thank you all for joining. This is probably going to be 10-15 minutes. This is going to be a recap of last week's conversation, and then the next week we'll talk about some of the programmatic media fundamentals and things that you want to remember as we enter Q4, the holiday season, right? So last week we talked Cookie Crumble. For those of you that are very interested, I'm going to go ahead and use the next 2 to 5 minutes to recap our conversation. But there are articles on my LinkedIn recapping our conversation. You can also head over to any of the social media profiles mentioned, including YouTube, where you can find the actual videos. And if you have any question, feel free to message me. So part of the conversation last week was the big cookie crumble. So I'll go ahead and give a little bit or refresh our memories in terms of what happened and when it happened. Google announced that they will no longer allow measurement tracking of cookies for the advertising world. We're no longer utilizing cookies in targeting. Of course, that's something that they announced sometime in 2020 of January of 2020. And now, most recently, this last quarter, they announced that they were going to postpone and delay this until 2023. So what do we know about cookies? Cookies are a piece of tracking on your web browsers, on your devices, in your app, allowing to track your behavior. We don't have access to your personal information unless you've given access to the device or to that app to have to have your information. So a cookie allows your browser or the apps or the publisher to basically have your online behavior and trends. Okay, so let's remember that. So I give the example of whenever you log into your Amazon app and you scroll down, and you'll see things like, oh, similar items, or finish what you started, or pick up where you started or where you left off. So that's the type of online behavior I'm talking about, which were allowed by cookies. Like cookie allowed that type of online measurement or tracking from a user perspective. And this is basically created to enhance user experience. So now that we understand the origins of cookies and why it was created, let's talk about how we used it from an advertising perspective. So from the advertising perspective, we've used it in different ways, but we overused it a lot. We've used it like a drug, like Matt Barash would say. And the reason why we say that is because as soon as we were able to utilize third-party cookies for advertising purposes, we use it in a targeting way for targeting tactics. So I give the example of Polk auto data last week, where Polk is known for their automotive data. So they're able to track things like registration, vehicle, financial vehicle information from the user perspective. And again, we do not know exactly like your personal information. And personal information is your name, your number, your social security. The only thing we may know is your email address if you've given permission to whoever, the advertisers or anyone else, that permission. We don't know who you are for real, for real. We only understand your online behavior. So let me see. Apparently Instagram, let me know if you have sound problem. If not, I'll probably just come back to it. If you have sound problem. So Polk data allowed us to target based on automotive data, right? So I give the example of if you are a local automotive or auto dealer and you are looking to target people that have either paid off their vehicles, have a vehicle that's 10 years older with a new message, or people that have their lease ending in the next few months, then this is a type of data third-party cookies or third-party data allowed us to have access to, was being able to access those audience profile made by data providers. Okay, so the Trade Desk, which is DSP, uh, calls it cookie mapping or cookie table. Basically, is the fact that, remember the cookies at the browser level or the app level? Data providers, technology made called DSPs or SSPs, or even data providers like Polk or Experience or other data providers, they made audience profile based on those cookies. Okay, and so we had access to those audience profile, and I give the example of Polk. So this is how the programmatic media world and even like some the advertising world use third-party data by utilizing, having access to those audience profile, and by incorporating third-party data targeting into their overall strategy. The best way to use it was the fact that it was used as a top to mid funnel, even lower funnel if you think about it, especially when you're targeting like frequent users or frequent travelers and your online company or your rental company. So those are the type of like strategy and tactic that third-party data allowed us to have access to and to track in our media strategy. Now, Google's announcement is basically letting us know that Chrome will no longer allow us to have access to those cookies. So we will no longer have access to cookie targeting, the cookie third-party data. On Thursday, we talked about what you should start looking at in terms of potential solution, potential steps to get into. We still have a good 18 to 24 months, I'm going to say, before this happened. And it's September 2021. So if you're watching this a month from now, thank you so much for coming by. But we still have about a year to year and a half before we are rid of this capability. So a lot of advertisers' sentiments are anxious. They're anxious because they do not have a clarity in terms of what will replace it. And they do not, the other sentiment is optimistic, which I am part of that industry sentiment, with the fact that removing third party data is only allowing us now to be more creative in how we are partnering with other programmatic vendors and data providers. Okay. So I give the example of LiveRamp. I've give the example of the Unified ID 2.0, which is basically a technology that is kind of like, I don't like to use the word replace of third-party cookies, but it's going to give us another option to perform behavioral targeting as we were before. There are downfalls to this, is the fact that there's probably going to be a scaling problem, because now we're removing like history and years of cookies and data into in the last 2 years. So there's probably going to be a scaling problem. But the positive things of it all is that Unified ID 2.0 is, again, a code, or it's the technology that's going to allow us to use hashed emails instead of that cookie in order to create those audience profiles. Third-party data, taking a step back, third-party data had also a downfall that I forgot to mention, which was fragmentation of the audience. So every data partners that made those audience profile based on the third-party cookies that they pull from devices such as browsers or your app or whoever, they all had their own unique way into making those profiles. And sometimes it could have been repetitive, or sometimes it could just be it wouldn't be as clear as it would have been. So that's where we talk about fragmentation of the audience. And honestly, that is the same problem that's happening right now in the CTV world. And I'll take the next 2 minutes to really explain what's going on in connected TV. And then we'll talk about this connected TV later on specifically. So CTV has about the same problem in terms of fragmentation of audiences, which is Roku will have an audience profile of yourself that is measured and tracked differently than maybe HBO Max is measuring you or tracking you. So your audience profile for HBO and your audience profile by Roku are measured and tracked slightly differently, and they're also ID differently. So the fragmentation happened, the fragmentation challenges happen where you are trying to target an audience profile and having to decide which partner to go with if you cannot go with both. So that's where the fragmentation happened. There's no one unique language in CTV at the moment. Same thing happened for third-party data audiences. There are no one what you call it, like language between all of those partners. So UID 2.0, Unified ID 2.0, which was initiated by the Trade Desk, have been adopted by a lot of vendors, which is promising for us advertisers, right? At least we won't have that big of a audience fragmentation problem like we had with third-party audience. So it's really important to remember these details as you're looking for your future partners, as you're looking to start testing, which you should be testing now. You should be testing identity solutions outside of third-party data audiences if you are using third-party data audiences, especially if you're using any Google products. So that's what you need to be careful. So UID 2.0 is allowing the industry to communicate on the one language, so that when, as advertisers and brand, we have to target audience based on those audience profiles, as mentioned earlier, then they'll be communicating between different partners, different technologies, different SSPs, which represent the supply side of the inventory that we'll be buying as advertisers and brands. So it's a very interesting topic, to say the least. I am going to end with the fact that there are different solutions. UID 2.0, LiveRamp is also one to consider when it comes to how to utilize your first-party data the best way. I mentioned LiveRamp, but please do your research. There are maybe a handful of data provider partners out there that you could be working with to allow you to really mold, monitor, and map your first party data. And your first party data is basically the data you own. You are a publisher, you have a domain, you have an app, you have a product and services that you're selling somewhere online, and you have access to that data that you're bringing in. First party data is the data that you own. Third party data is the data that you're buying from those, again, from directly from an app, directly from a publisher, which is a domain like the Washington Post or etc. The last thing that we'll talk about before we close is contextual targeting, which is another solution to consider adding into your programmatic mix or into your strategy. So just to be clear, we're going to define what contextual is and what you should know about contextual targeting. So I Googled contextual targeting is the process that matched ads to relevant sites in the display and programmatic world using keywords or topics among other factors. So it's basically, when you hear contextual targeting, think about site targeting versus audience targeting. What we are doing is that instead of targeting that behavior wherever it is at that moment online based on the audience profile characteristic, we're targeting context, a keyword or topic on the website. So let me give you an example. An example of contextual targeting would be in your DSP or looking for a data partner that offers what is a good one, since we're using auto industry. Okay, since we're using the auto industry as an example, contextual targeting will look something like anyone that is currently searching for electric cars, affordable electric cars. Okay, so that person is just looking for affordable electric cars. Contextual targeting, the way they will be served a contextual targeting ad would be if they're on a website that talks about electric cars. Okay, so keywords or categories electric cars, or affordable car, or affordable payment to get energy efficient automobile. So those are categories. So anyone that visit those sites categorized as such could be served this ad, versus having him serve using an audience profile. The third party audience would be, we know that these people have been actively searching those keywords based on the way they were measured from those cookies. Okay, so it's contextual targeting. It's actually a great strategy for upper funnels and sometimes even mid funnels, but more on the upper funnel, because you're targeting on a broader spectrum. You're targeting people from a category, not so much from an intent or in market. These people are just doing research. They're reading the Washington Post, they're reading CNN /auto /something. So it's categorized. The downfall with the contextual targeting is that one site might be categorized very, very differently or in many ways. So like I mentioned, CNN, it could have the news category, it could have an auto category, it can have a travel category. So we have to be very careful when we are looking at budgeting or funding this category, because it's so large, or general, I should say. But it is better. Anything is always better than the run of network, which is targeting everybody with no targeting. Okay, let's not be like that. But contextual targeting and category-based targeting is a very great way to continue fueling your funnel, your sales funnel, and then adding a programmatic media tactic such as audience targeting or third-party data with your first-party data, retargeting, cart abandoner strategy. All of that makes the beauty of it all. So see contextual as not a one-on-one solution or a direct solution from our third-party data going away, but mostly as another way to understand how to reach those customers. And then based on the measurement that you have implemented, you start looking at your data, you start looking at possibilities to either map your own data a certain way. When I say your own data, your first party data, or test a vendor that is utilizing that one language that communicates with the rest of the industry. And I mentioned the Unified 2.0. One thing that I did want to mention is the fact that a few years ago, the Washington Post created a technology called Zeus. It's actually, I think, called Zeus Prime, and it's a self-service ad platform that that's opened to ad buyers so that they can reach users across all sites using Zeus performance. Zeus is a great partner or a vendor to consider. I have not worked with them particularly, but I want to say that based on my research, they are offering contextual targeting on steroids because they own a bunch of sites and domains, and actually some of that I've looked up are they owned the McClatchy, the Media News Group, the Tribune Publishing, amongst many more. So you know that they'll have internal inventory. And the great things about partnering with Zeus or somebody like Zeus or doing a direct partnership is the fact that they have their own internal inventory that they will be able to dice and slice for us and categorize for our use, for the buyer use, for the brand use. So remember how I mentioned that contextual was very general. With Zeus, they're making things very, very, a little bit more niched. So again, there may be some scalability problem, or there may be some, scalability challenges. But the reality is that we are going to need to test those solutions different ways, different times, with different partners if needed. But we have the time to do it. That's why I'm part of the optimistic boat. You have time to test some of these. So don't, there's a lot going on, especially I know that a lot of brands are using Google products, which make things very, very interesting and also are not interesting and efficient in terms of like measurement and targeting and having all in one. And I know, for instance, like DV360, SA360, J360 can all be pulled under one, so it gives you the holistic view if you're not investing in like a data visualization tool like Domo or Datarama or even Google Dashboard. So knowing the options that you have, knowing the solution that you have, the keyword here is test. We love this keyword, but you got to test different technology, test different advertisers. If you don't know where to start, take it back one step. And I'll leave with this advice. If you don't know where to start, take a breather. Think about your advertiser, think about your brand, think about your marketing objective. Based on that marketing objective, what is your main goal? Is it ROAS, return on ad spend? Is it return on investment from a holistic marketing perspective? Is it sales? Is it foot traffic? Look at your objectives. Identify which tactics have worked the best now. Look for solution based on that. Okay, look at the best performing tactic that you have running right now. If it's SEM, if it's paid social, if it's third-party data, look at how you're acquiring those results, identify where it's coming from, and based on that source, or based on your results in terms of where you're looking for, make sure to look for a solution that matches that, or that's how you would look for a potential partner. So if your best performing one is SEM, but you know that you have to have some type of third-party data audience via programmatic, then maybe you need to consider a contextual partner. I mentioned Zeus partner, but there's many other contextual partners, including some brand safety / contextual partners. So there's Integral at Science, there's GumGum, actually, there is Peer 39. There's a lot of partners out there that focus on utilizing first-party data with contextual mirrored together, in addition of the Zeus technology that I mentioned. If you know that paid social is one of your strongest suits, which if it is, please let me know how and why. No, I'm kidding. I'm not throwing no shades here. But if that is the case, understand that, okay, if it is paid social, is it just the environment or is it the message that's speaking really loudly? Okay. So there's ways to look at how, or the first steps in terms of where to start. So that's all I had for you all. Programmatically Correct is a live series meant to demystify the programmatic world from a digital marketing perspective. So somebody that is not potentially working in his day to day, but want to learn more about the industry. In the next couple weeks, we'll even take a step further back in terms of talking back, about the fundamentals, why programmatic is important, what is programmatic right now, because there's a lot going on. What are the type of targeting or tactics that you can think about using when it comes to programmatic media? How well is it married to other tactic, or how well does it work with other tactic? Like, I love to talk, especially on the podcast, we love to talk about how the best performing campaigns are actually the omni-channel ones across different tactics. So not only programmatic, but maybe CTV mix, maybe SEM with it, maybe whatever, maybe even digital out of home. So there is a lot of opportunities when it comes to it, including programmatic media into your service, into your strategy, or offering it as a service. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Instagram. Thank you, Clubhouse. If you have any questions, I'd love to help you understand where to start, how to look at the information I just shared. But most importantly, like, I'm gonna challenge you to remain in control, that there are solutions out there that maybe we don't feel like looking at it because it's going to be a lot of work, but it's work that you would rather do now that we have the opportunity to test during this test phase versus doing it later. So happy to have more conversation. My name is Ellen Parker. You can find me on all social media almost. I am the host of the Programmatic Digest podcast, the Programmatically Correct show, which is a live series on Monday and Thursday at 12 p.m., which is maybe GMT -4. We're still in -4 before fall comes. And if not, email me, info@helenparker.com, info@helenparker.com, or helenparker.com for more information. So thank you so much, and see you on Thursday, same time, same place, where we'll start talking a little bit more about programmatic media as a whole, holistically. Have a wonderful day, y'all.